we just got started. There's so much we're going to be covering. I would like to welcome to the stage Denise Thomas from the World Trade Center. I actually want to say a few words. I do. I won't talk about you. So, here's my partner in crime.
This is my sister.
You remember when I said I wanted to do this?
Yes, I do.
She totally was like, let's do this, right?
Yes.
And I want to say thank you.
You're welcome.
For all your support. Your team is amazing, and it's a great resource we have in our community. Mm-hmm. And, you know, if you need anything done, like I was being interviewed and I said, hey, the World Trade Center was here before me, they'll be here after me. So please check them out, get her business card, and she's here to support you. And when she runs the Africa desk, so please leverage this amazing woman and let her connect you to Africa. Thank you so much.
No, you're welcome. You did a good job. So I'm going to stop and embarrass Toyin for just a second. Yes, I can. She's shaking her head. I can do anything I want. My name's Denise. So those of you who know me know that I get what I want because I ask really loud. And then when you tell me no, I remind you that I'm going to keep coming back until you tell me yes. Joseph is shaking his head because he knows. So, Toyin, you have done an amazing thing. I am very proud of you, and I admire your tenacity. So I have this thing that when people do good works and do something wonderful, that we always praise them at their grave. We never praise them and tell them how wonderful they are, what they mean to us, to their face. So I'm telling you that I appreciate you as my friend, as my sister, as my champion, to help me do something that I've always wanted to do that you made happen. You single-handedly put all of these people in this room with strength. Look at them. Everybody here is grateful for the work that you've done. And we need to say that to you in your life. And I need to say it to you from my heart, because that's true.
Thank you.
So I tell everybody quickly that I think it's important that we tell her thank you and that we appreciate her, even though she doesn't like it. It's important that we do that, not just for her soul, but for our own. So thank you for this gift for us to make new friends, to experience something wonderful, and have the opportunity to change the world.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right. Proud of you. Love you too. Okay, I am going to ask my panelists to come up. So I'm going to make this a little different. We had talked about doing a panel and ask questions, but I want this to be more of a conversation. We have had the wonderful opportunity to talk to each other on the little bit on the phone via email and kind of get to know each other a bit. But I'm going to allow them the opportunity to introduce themselves because I think no one can tell their story better than they can. And because I'm not intimately involved in your lives, I don't have little stories to tell about you all just yet, but I'm sure by the end of this we will. Oh, yes. Okay, so I love pepper goat stew. And we all ate it, and we all loved it. And they've been teasing me because the entire time I'm in Nigeria, that's pretty much all I eat, is a pepper goat stew. And Toyin, and what's the lady's name? I see her. Wave. Who made the soup? Wave. Thank you. The soup was fabulous. So thank you very much. So we'll begin. Go ahead. I'm going to have Shakira introduce herself first.
Good morning to everybody. It's such a lovely morning to be here in Arkansas. As I mentioned last night, driving through from the airport, everything was green, everything looked beautiful. It reminded me of back home in South Africa. And I would like to say thank you to Toyin again. This is such an amazing opportunity to be here in Arkansas to talk about the African continent and to talk about South Africa specifically. It's so nice to be at the gathering where there is so much of positivity and warmth about the future and the opportunities that are currently available in Africa. Usually we find that we are fighting our battles and challenges alone in promoting opportunities in Africa. But here we have such a warm welcome group. It only bodes well for the future in terms of collaboration. The other, sorry, am I talking too much?
No, go right ahead.
The other very interesting thing that I was reading about over the past few days, in terms of the strong ties between Arkansas and South Africa, for example, is Walmart. I just read that Walmart is taking on Amazon on the international front, and they have acquired e-commerce company in India called Flipkart, I believe. And a South African company, Naspers, has actually sold its share, which is about $2.2 billion in that company. So that's an example of collaboration between Arkansas and South Africa. And we hope we're going to see so much more collaboration because, as I mentioned to Denise, it's not just about making America great again. It's about making every country great and ensuring that we have access to global supply value chains and job creation on the continent and Arkansas and the entire world, basically. We want to uplift everybody when we perform our actions in terms of collaboration on trade flows, investment flows, as well as learning in terms of technical transfer. And there are so many opportunities that we have to harness between South Africa and the USA. As mentioned by the previous eloquent presenter, we are not even utilizing AGOA to its full extent. There are over 7,000 product lines, tariff lines, from the generalized system of preferences as well as AGOA, and such a small percentage of that is currently being utilized. So I will stop there.
That's good. Thank you.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Kayode, Laro, Consul of Nigerian in Atlanta. It's a pleasure to be here. Let me just quickly say that the Nigerian Consulate in Atlanta is one of 3 missions Nigeria has in the United States. We have the Consulate in New York, we have the Embassy in Washington, and the Consulate in Atlanta. The Consulate in Atlanta has responsibility for 16 states in the southern US, from Texas in the west to Florida in the east. And it goes as far north as Missouri, and going across the Mississippi all the way to North Carolina. So it's a good chunk of the country. With a large population of Nigerians. The state of Texas has the largest population of Nigerians in the US. We have a good number of Nigerians here in the state of Arkansas as well, but I think they are concentrated around the Little Rock area, I understand. So, yeah, it's a pleasure to be here. My journey to this place started in January when I met Tony at another investment forum in Tampa, that's in the state of Florida. And she also came there as a participant. And it was during one of the breaks we had that we got talking, and we actually sat by coincidence at the same table, I think during a lunch break. She was just right next to me, and we got talking, and then she mentioned this event coming up in Bentonville. And of course, Bentonville, when you hear Bentonville, what comes to your mind? Walmart is the first thing that comes to your mind. And of course, when you hear about Walmart, the #1 company on the Fortune 500, the largest company in the world by revenue. So this obviously, it rings a bell. And what Twain said then in Tampa that, really struck me was, and I think she gave a hint of that again this morning, that it's one thing for policymakers to make policies that affect trade, and discuss about these things. The actual trade has to be done with, in discussions, in conversations with companies like Walmart. That's what she said. And then she mentioned that she was going to have this event, and I said, all right, this seems to be an event that I should, like to be at. And here I am, and it's a pleasure to be here. And, just looking around the hall, the quality, it's not just the number of people that are here, but I think the quality of the participation is probably even far more important than the number of people that are here. And I truly commend Twain for the effort she has put into organizing this and putting all this together. I mean, it's a huge effort. It's a huge effort. She is not just focused on Nigeria, which is her country. She's focused on Africa. That's the continent, and that's 53 or 54 countries, and that's a lot. And that's a lot. And so you know, it's a pleasure to be here and to participate in this panel discussion. I of course would try as much as possible to have an African perspective on whatever I say here this morning, but there might be a bit of a focus on Nigeria because, of course, that's the country I represent. Thank you all so much.
Thank you. Let's start the discussion and let's talk a little bit about your collective countries and the continent as a whole. What are some of the best opportunities for Arkansas companies and companies in the United States? What should they focus on?
So we mentioned AGOA previously, and we also mentioned the tripartite free trade agreement. As mentioned, inter-regional trade isn't ideal. The trade figures have been slowing down. But from a South African perspective, it is so important to focus more on trade with our other African countries. And that's why we would like to push American companies looking to enter the African market to look at headquartering or partnering with South African countries, because Africa has so much of opportunities in terms of trade for these companies. So that's a major opportunity that shouldn't be ignored. As mentioned, the African continent is the second largest growing, second to Asia. And there are so many opportunities in terms of demand from the middle class population, as well as the growing need for products and services from the rest of the world. In South Africa particularly, we are providing a lot of funding and incentives for multinational companies, and they are finding it very lucrative to use South Africa as a regional headquarters into the rest of Africa. For example, we have many of the original equipment manufacturers based in South Africa. We have Ford as well in South Africa, and Ford manufactures some of their SUVs in South Africa. But the latest from a European company that is taking advantage of this is BMW. And just this week, they've rolled out the production of their X3 vehicles in South Africa. So it's not just the automotive sector. If you look at Arkansas, the key sectors that Arkansas focuses on, manufacturing, the food sector, the aerospace sector, and the forestry, paper and pulp. And there are so many synergies that we could look into, again, as I mentioned, in terms of the global supply value chain. From the South African perspective, we have priority sectors whereby we're looking to partner with US companies on. Actually, we do have a few US companies providing technical transfer in terms of innovative technology that has been created here in the US and which we are licensing in South Africa, enabling us to increase our manufacturing capacity in sectors such as renewable energy. But I just want to go through the list of the sectors that we prioritize to give you a better idea of what our focus is in South Africa and where we feel American companies would have the most opportunities in. And that includes advanced manufacturing. We have strong financial incentives as well as non-cash incentives that are available for activity in that sector. We actually, in a few months' time, we have an event called the Manufacturing Indaba, which is not just focused on South African manufacturing. It focuses on the fourth wave of industrialization, the Internet of Things, and how the manufacturing industry should adapt, particularly in Africa, to this new fourth industrialization wave. And that's going to be held in Gauteng. So nanotechnology is another key sector. We have a very strong mining sector, so mining and beneficiation is key to us. We would like to focus on renewable and green energy. To that end, we do have quite a few partnerships with US companies. And we are very active in pursuing a higher percentage of energy allocation via renewable energy, and we have an independent power producers program that focuses on independent producers selling to the national grid. We focus on agribusiness, that is very key. We have a lot of US companies, for example, Land of Lakes, Archer Daniels Midland, already in South Africa working on that. I mentioned automotives and components. We also focus on capital equipment, precision engineering, the aerospace sector. And something really interesting, we have an aerospace event that's happening in Gauteng in September. And the advertisement for the aerospace event actually has the picture of the American delegation, because on an annual basis, we find more and more US companies participating in that event, showcasing American expertise. We are very big in film production, and that's why I was so excited to be here last night, because I met somebody who I think I would be able to partner with in furthering South African film industry, as well as working on developing the industry further. In fact, the South African Department of Trade and Industry is currently proposing to fund film producers from the US, anybody in the animation and production industry, to visit the Durban International Film Festival, which will be happening in July this year, and also to show US filmmakers the different locations available in South Africa. And South Africa has actually worked with many of the big houses such as Disney in terms of pre- and post-production facilities. We have a strong tourism sector that we also would like to promote, as does the whole of Africa. There are so many beautiful places to visit in Africa. We focus on oil and gas, on boat building. Actually, we participate at the Miami International Boat Show because we like to sell our catamarans to the US. We focus on ICT and electronics, business process outsourcing. We've actually won an award in the UK as the best outsourcing and offshoring destination in the world in 2016. We focus on plastics and composites, leather and footwear, clothing and textiles, waste management, energy efficiency and cleaner technology, and biopharmaceuticals. Besides the fact that we would like to recruit FDI into South Africa, we also like to focus internally in our country and try to support local business. And something very interesting that has been announced this week is a local company that started from a 2-bedroom house in Durban, which is in the state of KwaZulu-Natal, that is now a multinational pharmaceutical company represented in 50 countries, and they've just made an additional investment into a high containment facility in the Eastern Cape in South Africa, and this is worth about $100 million, which is R1 billion roughly. So if we as South Africa and as our African countries need to prosper and grow, we do believe that it starts at home. We need to focus on our companies back home as a start, nurture them, ensure that there's adequate infrastructure and support mechanisms so that they can grow and expand their investment. And secondly, we would love to partner with the US companies to ensure that we could access other markets in Africa.
That was well done, and I've got a couple of things I want to add to that, just so that people in the room who don't know have a better understanding of the state. We have a nanotechnology center right here in Northwest Arkansas in Fayetteville. That nanotechnology is something that innovative students and professionals have come together to create a facility where these things can be tested, researched, and we're willing to partner and work with other governments and countries to help facilitate that and to help it grow. When she spoke about agriculture, and everybody who's from Arkansas knows that we are the rice and chicken people. The state, if you want to grow rice, if you want to farm chickens, that you cannot get better technology than what we have here. I know that during the presentation with the African Development Bank, I thought it was really interesting that you hit so well on agricultural technology. There's several companies I'm going to give you names of that are here in our state that would really benefit and want to do business in Africa. So I think from these types of forums and listening to what you have to say, once we really understand what we have, what resources we have, we can share that information, we can share that technology. One of the things that my communicator, Sam Cushman, is in here. I don't see him now. Oh, he's waving. Stand up, Sam, so they can see you. I'm going to ask Sam to take the minute. When we're done, if you get with Shakira, let's put this on the website of the trade shows. If any of you have trade shows and events that are happening in your country, give them to us and go to the website and you can start pulling them up. And Sam is the guy who would do that for us. And I think that's a beginning of a nice start for us to do it. One of the things that Toyin said, she said, give us actionable items, give us things that we can actually do and to move us forward. And that's a simple thing that we can do. And if I have it in my head or if it's on my phone, I will give you the phone number, the email right now. So ask me, and if I've got it, you can have it. And if Sam has it, he'll give it to you right now. So then we can move forward. I'm gonna go ahead and move on and allow you to present.
Thank you, Denise. Mr. Zuvek, who spoke earlier, made a very strong case for investment in Africa. But let me just quickly add that, yes, the U.S., has investments across the continent, but in the case of my country, U.S. investment in Nigeria is focused largely in the energy sector. So we have companies like Texaco, Chevron, doing good business in the energy sector. But, it's interesting because a lot of people outside this country associate this country with tech. When they think of the US, they think of Microsoft, Tesla, and so on. But there's a lot more to the US we know than that. And what we particularly appreciate is the strengths that the US has in the field of agriculture. And we believe that there's a lot that can be gained if Nigeria and the US, as a matter of fact, if Africa and the US engage a lot closer in the field of agriculture. In Nigeria, the federal government is doing a lot now to open up the agriculture sector, and all these efforts are geared to encouraging investment, local investment, foreign investment across different sectors within the agriculture sector. We have favorable policies that are geared towards encouraging investment, and again, not just for foreign investors, but also for local investors. And the same thing goes for the energy sector. We are seeking investments in renewable energy and also in aspects of things like solar energy, solar. Mr. Zufek also mentioned about how technology is being applied to leapfrog Africa. So there's a lot going on in the communication sector in Nigeria right now. There is a lot going on there. So we're open to investments in that sector as well. But now, if I were to talk specifically about the state of Arkansas and how the state of Arkansas, the great state of Arkansas, can cooperate with Africa and specifically with Nigeria, I would say that one area that we would be keen to look at in the state of Arkansas is aquaculture. And in this area, we're looking specifically at catfish farming, because from my research, the state of Arkansas is the third in the U.S. in terms of production of catfish. Catfish is a very popular source of protein in Nigeria, And the fact that, catfish can be raised almost with very rudimentary equipment and facilities makes it accessible to people as a business. So, and for what the state of Arkansas has achieved in that area, I think we would be looking to cooperate closely with this state in catfish. Through my research, I understand that this state, the state of Arkansas, was the first to develop catfish farming in the United States in the 1950s. So it means Arkansas has more than, 60 years of experience in catfish farming. We would like to tap into that. And I'm also, through my research, I also found out that from catfish in the state of Arkansas, sales of over $70 million are generated, and that's a lot. That's a lot. That's a lot. We would like to tap into that because in Nigeria, the demand for catfish exceeds the supply. So, and that means there's an opportunity. I mean, that gap has to be closed somehow. And the only way it can be closed is through investment. And we're producing, but we're not producing enough. Mr. Zufak, I keep referring to his presentation because not only was it a brilliant presentation, it covered most of the points that are important to, in this conversation about trade with Africa. He talked about, he kept referring to GDP growth and population. He kept comparing the two. And we have, of course, the largest, which I believe you all know, the largest population in Africa. And this creates opportunities and challenges. Challenges in terms of the need, people need to be fed. But this, again, creates an opportunity because where there's a demand, there's room for, there's room for entrepreneurs, to fill the gap and make the supply available. So we would like to going forward, I think if it's one thing we're going to take out of this forum, this investment summit, it's the need for us to look closely now at Arkansas as a partner, as a possible partner in the production of catfish in Nigeria. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We can do that easily. You can clap. Yay! There's a University of Arkansas, Pine Bluff is the university that really focuses on aquaculture. And that university has really nice facilities, and we have been more than happy to welcome you all back to come back. Anyone who wants to do that, we can actually plan and coordinate something where you can actually visit the institution and get a tour and really talk to those professors about how to do that. And we've done that several times. So yes, that's definitely a possibility. Yes.
All right. Can I just add that?
Sure.
One of the challenges we face back home in Nigeria in the area of catfish farming is with the production of fingerlings. That's the small fish, and feed.
Okay.
So if we can, because obviously the quality of the feed applied in the process is crucial in the whole farming endeavor. And from my research, the kind of feed that works best in catfish farming is the type that when you put in the pond where the fish are, floats on the surface. So that's what I found from my research. And so what Nigerian producers try to do is they have two choices, basically. They can buy from the market, the feed, or they can try to produce their own feed and through that try to cut down on costs. So that, again, that creates an opportunity. The production of feed, as a sub-activity in catfish farming. So you see, it's we're talking about catfish farming, but then now we're also talking about feeds and fingerlings.
Supply chain.
There's that supply chain and that. This it has the capacity to generate a lot of activity. And as I said, we would like to learn, the most modern techniques, for producing these things to enhance the efficiency. Because Mr. Zufak said something again about productivity. Productivity, that's getting more out of out of, say, X amount of resources.
Right.
So if you can increase the resources you have, then you have to increase the productivity of the resources. And this is really the challenge for us, and we would like to cooperate with the state of Arkansas, the great state of Arkansas, in that area. Thank you.
Thank you. I think that with what you're saying, it leads me into my next question. And when we talk about building capacity and expanding resources, you both have mentioned about larger corporations that have made foreign direct investment. But kind of talk to me a little bit about the mom and pop operation, the people who would actually make the feed, or the people that would actually come and assemble the aquaponic tanks, for the company that may support Mercedes in a very minor way by just doing branding and marketing, those types of things, the companies, the everyday consumers. So in the United States, most of our GDP comes from small business. So we really want to focus on those small businesses. How could they take advantage of some of the things that South Africa has to offer, Nigeria has to offer, and then the continent as a whole?
Before I answer that question, I just wanted to include myself in the conversation regarding aquaculture. So we also have just, Cabinet has just announced this, our South African Cabinet has announced our strategy for aquaculture and an aquaculture development plan. Because South Africa has various regional industrial zones whereby we like to focus on specific industries. And what I find really interesting is aquaculture is also one of our key industries for development, and where we would love to collaborate in terms of maybe university research and development on that scale. And so that's something I think that South Africa and Nigeria can partner on in Arkansas. So I just wanted to add South Africa to the milieu there.
No, that's perfect. And I love that. I love that. And this is why I love that, because we took a trip to the Netherlands, or at least I took a trip to the Netherlands, and what I found was they have this wonderful thing about water. And we have a program that we're working on here at the university about clean water and how these microbials can clean waste from water. And from that conversation, we talked about this. I met somebody from the Port of San Diego, plus the researchers here, a robotics professor here, and then we pulled in the University of the Netherlands. So now you have all of these people talking about what they can do to find some kind of collaborative research for clean water, for conservation, and now they've started talking about farming underwater in the ocean off the Port of San Diego using robotic technology from our university here. So this is the beginning of those conversations. And what I found is that banks like cooperation. And they like it when there's multiple things going on, so that when we go out and look for grants and we look for funding for these types of things, when they see that there's a collaboration between multiple entities and that this can actually change the way we do something, it can move forward quickly. So I would say yes to that. And I think that's a good way to do it. That also goes back to, how do small businesses pull into doing something like that? How can they benefit from these types of things in your country? And then what can we do here in Arkansas to help your small businesses facilitate some business opportunities?
Exactly. Well, I have more to say about
okay.
that. So it's very interesting that you say, and I've read this, that small businesses in the US are the major contributor to the GDP. Mm-hmm. And in South Africa, we're trying very hard to instill a culture of entrepreneurship. We actually had the creation of a new department, a new ministry focusing on small business development a few years ago. But we still have a very long way to go in terms of having small businesses maintain their businesses. Although we have a relatively high percentage of businesses starting up, their sustainability isn't really very effective. So what we are doing in Chicago and on a small scale is, for example, something that's happening in June. We have the Water Research Commission visiting the USA, and their core focus currently is to transform the landscape in terms of the sizes of the companies in that landscape. And their focus is on prioritizing small and medium-sized companies who have some innovative technology that they've developed and need to understand how to commercialize it. So they will be attending a water conference, not in Arkansas, but in Vegas. But I think that there would be so many areas that we could collaborate in with this Water Research Commission and exposing South African small to medium enterprises in the water technology sector to those in, for example, Arkansas, and you mentioned San Diego, and providing a platform in terms of them seeing how they fare on a global scale. I was conducting some research in terms of water technology, and some European countries, for example, have a high number of companies, and I'd say Israel, for example, in leading water technology in terms of wave technology. And South Africa is a country that is enveloped with the ocean on both sides, which is the Atlantic and the Indian Ocean. And there's so many opportunities that we have to harness that ocean. We actually have something called Operation Pakisa, which is a thick document focusing on how we can harness the ocean in terms of commercial opportunities. And it covers such a broad spectrum of sectors. It covers offshore oil and gas sector, aquaculture-related projects, projects in renewable energy, and there's just so much that we have to do as a country in South Africa on that. But moving to other industries where we would like to focus on small business, for us, a US small to medium-sized business is not really regarded as small in South Africa. Those are actually the companies that South African companies would love to be linked up to, because those are the companies that would be able to source input material in the US, and that South African companies would be able to supply comfortably. For example, it would be very challenging for a small business in South Africa to supply Walmart. I mean, we wouldn't be able to cope with the quantities required in certain instances. So it's more important for us to partner with small and medium-sized US companies, and that's what we're encouraging. In other industries, for example, the film industry, we would like to bring out emerging film producers to the US and to learn from the US in terms of how we can develop further in that industry. Although we have many well-established industries in South Africa, we are also on a drive to ensure transformation in the sectors. And something that's really a huge priority with government is creating that core of what we call black industrialists. We have one of the most well-known stock exchanges in the world, but many of the companies on that stock exchange don't reflect the diversity in our country. So that's why there's such a strong focus from our government in terms of minority business, creating those industrialists, and skilling and equipping small and medium-sized businesses in South Africa.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Denise. Before I respond to the question on small and medium enterprises, let me just quickly respond to Shakira's offer for Nigeria and South Africa to jointly work on aquaculture research with educational institutions here in Arkansas. That's a brilliant idea, and we're very much open to it. You know, and after we leave here, I'll it's something I think I'd like to maybe take up with you, because first of all, Nigeria and South Africa have a framework for cooperation, which is the Nigeria-South Africa Binational Commission, and it's headed at the level of the vice presidents, to show you how important and how important it is and how seriously we take it. So this is a framework that has been in existence almost since the time of President Mandela's release. You know, so it's been there for a while and it's working. So this discussion we're having now, I think we can take it into that framework and use it to strengthen our collaboration, because much of Mr. Zufak's presentation talked about Nigeria and South Africa, because these are the two largest economies in the continent. And if Nigeria and South Africa get it right, I think the continent is going to get it right too. Specifically consider them in the context of catfish farming. I think really not only is there a lot that they can do, there is actually a lot that's going on now that they're doing. because I mentioned the issue of feed, feeds for the fish. What happens in Nigeria is that the catfish farmer focuses on raising the fish. So he sources his inputs, feeds, and other things from other producers. And what we see more often than not is that it is the small and medium enterprises that are involved in the production of fingerlings and the feed. So what I see here is an opportunity for businesses in the great state of Arkansas and, of course, other parts of the U.S. To collaborate, to work in Nigeria, to identify small and medium enterprises in Nigeria with which they can work. Because I mean, from my research and knowing what the great state of Arkansas has achieved in the production of catfish, I believe there's a lot we can learn, from these achievements and apply to our needs of today. So, yes, small and medium enterprises are the bedrock of Nigerian business, just like they are here in the US as well. I mean, we hear about the large corporations, the Walmarts and so on, but we have a lot of these mom and pop operations across the country, here in the US and also in Nigeria, doing great work. So we would like to see, and indeed, you see, if you talk about engagement at a people-to-people level, of course, you can have B2B, business to business, but for you to have engagement at a people-to-people level, which strengthens a trade and economic engagement, you have to involve the small and medium enterprises. I don't want to talk about AGOA because a lot is going to be said about that tomorrow. Toyin has said so, that we're going to be hearing a lot about AGOA tomorrow. But one of the reasons AGOA hasn't quite taken off is because, and Toyin mentioned it too, the small and medium enterprises are not in it. They're not in it. So, and as I said, they represent 90% of people working in business in Nigeria. And until and unless we get them involved in trade with the US, I think we're going to be having a lot of potential that is basically untapped. So yes, SMEs have, they have a lot of work to do. They have a lot of opportunity to do the work, but they have constraints sometimes in terms of having the latest technologies. And I believe this is something that can form the basis, of cooperation between SMEs in my country and SMEs in the great state of Arkansas, specifically in the field of catfish farming. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to be mindful of time because I'm pretty sure we're close, right? Yes? Okay, perfect. I want to ask one more question, and then I want to open it up to Q&A. I know that with the panels, we can kind of get caught up in the moment because we like what we're talking about. It's important to us. So I want to be mindful of that to give you all opportunities to ask specific questions. So quickly, what are the biggest obstacles of doing business in Africa? We'll start with you again.
From a South African perspective, I would say that there's not much that I can say. South Africa traditionally and historically has had a lot of strong infrastructure, and with our colonial past, we have a very much a European-centric way of doing business, and it's quite easy to engage with South Africa as a country in terms of business, in terms of trade and investment flows. But I would change the question around and say that it's not really an obstacle, but one of the benefits of an American company thinking to enter the African continent. One of the benefits is pursuing partnership and collaboration, joint venture collaboration with a South African company or entity. And the reason being is that South African companies are very active on the rest of the African continent. a lot of the FDI flows into the rest of Africa do emanate from South African companies. We have a strong retail sector in many of the African countries. Our ShopRite and Checkers is well known across the rest of Africa. Our construction companies are well known and have been, our hotel industry in terms of hotel and tourism development in the rest of Africa. And because of the infrastructure that we have available in South Africa, we usually like to promote South Africa as a destination for the rest of the world when looking at locating your regional headquarters, your African headquarters. And that has been the case for many multinational companies. And besides that, the experience that South African companies have in doing business with the rest of Africa mean that if you partner with a South African company, you have somebody that will help you and enable you to easily enter into that market. So although there can be many obstacles mentioned in terms of corruption, the corruption index, the language barrier, the cultural norms, if you look at partnering with a South African company, this could really assist you in entering much easier, and your startup and challenges would be reduced significantly. Just to mention why I said that I can't really speak about many obstacles in terms of South Africa itself. I'm looking at some of the statistics here, and apparently South Africa is the #1 diversified economy in Africa. That's not apparent, that is a fact, according to the IMF. And there is a report, Africa Attractiveness Report, that was done by A.T. Kearney, I believe, and South Africa featured prominently in terms of multinationals looking at South Africa as a destination for investment. We have a very advanced financial services sector. We have a strong banking system. Our securities exchange is highly regulated. And there was an Africa Attractiveness Survey, it's a bit dated now, it's 2016, talking about multinationals, location of choice. And South Africa ranked #1 in that. That was a survey by Ernst & Young. We also have got many other positive features in terms of our services sector, in terms of, I mentioned our infrastructure, in terms of our global innovation index rankings. In 2016, we ranked #1 in terms of being the most technologically advanced country in Africa. I mentioned that we are a leading destination for the blockbuster movie productions in Africa, and we're being used by Disney, Warner Brothers and Sony. So from the perspective of South Africa, we don't see many obstacles. I think last year there was a lot of doubt about our country given the political situation in terms of our change of leadership, a change in our ministers. But this year, we have appointed a new president, we've had a reshuffling of cabinet, and we even see that many of the agencies that give us rankings or ratings have signified they have a renewed positive outlook for South Africa. In 2017, our growth rate was 1.3%, but in the last quarter of 2017, it was actually 3.1%, so we're on the right track. And if there were obstacles in the past, we have recognized that, and we are putting measures in place to ensure that we move towards a more positive economy and outlook. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Denise. Well, in terms of obstacles to doing business in Africa, you know, I think I'll just rather focus on Nigeria.
That's okay.
Yeah. The reason being that we can't really generalize.
You can't.
You know, and there's no one-size-fits-all thing here. There are variations across the continent, and as Mr. Zufek said, the continent is not a country. Africa is not a country, you know. So, but you know, and I'll be honest. There are challenges. Yes, there are. And, you know, the first step in addressing a challenge is actually being honest about it and admitting it's there. You know, so yes, we have challenges. You know, you may call them obstacles, but I think obstacles are really just meant to be overcome, you know. So, and for a determined businessman, the greater the, you know, the difficulty actually sometimes, you know, the greater the reward, you know. And as the motto of the British SAS, that's the British Special Forces, goes, who dares wins, you know, who dares wins. So yes, there are challenges, and you know, some of them revolve around issues of infrastructure, because an American businessman who is used to what you have here, you know, in terms of you know, world-class infrastructure, might have certain perceptions about what they might find on the ground if they go to Africa or if they go to Nigeria. I mean, let me just say right away that we have challenges in terms of infrastructure, especially in the area of power. And the problem in our power sector isn't so much that we're not producing. It's just that there are multiple issues involved. And the core issue here actually is energy pricing, energy economics. You know, so because the government is trying to keep down energy costs for a variety of reasons, including the welfare of citizens and even costs. You know, but at the same time, the costs are there and you can't ignore them. So there is a discussion going on now within the energy sector to address the issue of energy economics. That's the pricing of energy. You know, there are also, I think, you might also say something like maybe a lack of information could also be considered to be a challenge. I wouldn't say an obstacle, a challenge. I think US companies may not have adequate information about the opportunities that exist in Nigeria or in Africa. And similarly, African companies, Nigerian companies may not have adequate information about the opportunities that exist here in the US. And, you know, and this is where the chambers of commerce come in. So, because it's not something that the government can do alone, even if it wants to. You know, it has to be a partnership, you know, a joint effort between the government and the private sector. The private sector, in this case, represented by the chambers of commerce, you know. So, and, you know, in terms of Nigeria, even in this hall, people have come to me to say, look, you know, we would like you to just say something about the issue of corruption and all that, because companies don't want to get involved in anything that will affect their integrity one way or another. But let me just quickly say that the administration of President Muhammadu Buhari has, in the short time that it's been there, just 3 years now, you know, has done a tremendous amount in the fight against corruption, a tremendous amount. A lot of work has been done. And it's ongoing. This is an ongoing thing, because when you are trying to reverse a situation that has existed for decades, you're in a marathon. It's not a sprint. You're in a marathon. So, and when you're in a marathon, you have to just be prepared for the long haul, basically. You know, and this is the approach that the government, led by President Muhammadu Buhari, has taken. The president, even President Trump said it, that he is a man of integrity. He's a man of integrity. And he is leading the fight personally against corruption in Nigeria. But what I would advise any business aiming to do business in Nigeria, any company aiming to do business in Nigeria, is to work through the chambers of commerce. You know, we have a National Chamber of Commerce. The National Chamber of Commerce will be in a position to, you know, to more or less guarantee, whatever company you're aiming to work with. Because as Shakira said, she said that in South Africa, I don't want to say they'll use the word preference, but what they see is that there's a need to have local partnerships for these things to work, for international trade to work. That's trade with the US. It's the same thing in Nigeria. Any US company aiming to go to Nigeria will need a local partner. And my advice is that local partners should be sought through the Chamber of Commerce. To that way you can be sure of who you're planning to work with. And the chamber will give certain guarantees. So that's it. But then when you talk about the business environment in Nigeria, it's getting better. I mean, we all heard in Mr. Zufek's presentation that Nigeria is one of the most improved in terms of ease of doing business last year. He mentioned Nigeria along with, I think, two or three other African countries, including Ethiopia. So, and we have in Nigeria a Presidential Enabling Business Environment Council headed by the Vice President. That's how important the government takes, that's the level of importance the government attaches to this committee. It is headed by the Vice President. My minister, the Minister of Foreign Affairs, is in that committee. The Minister of Trade is on the committee. The Minister of Finance is there. The Governor of the Central Bank is there. So the head of the Customs Service is there. Even the head of the Immigration Service is there. Because what the committee has taken as focus, basically 8 areas. 1, starting a business. The committee has now succeeded in cutting down to just 2 days, 2 business days, the amount of time it takes to set up a business in Nigeria. 2 business days. In the past, it used to be as much as 2-3 months. So that's a huge achievement. And the committee is also working on improving the process of getting construction permits, getting connected, that's for businesses getting connected to the public power supply, getting credit from banks, paying taxes, cross-border trading, registering property, as well as entry and exit of people, because that's very crucial. You can't attract business and you will not encourage businessmen to come to your country if it takes them forever to get a visa. You see. So, but what the federal government of Nigeria has done now is that for businessmen, you can actually get a visa on arrival either in Lagos or Abuja or any of the international airports. You can get a visa on arrival. So these are some of the things that have been done to improve the business environment in Nigeria.
Thank you. We are out of time, but I'm going to do something that is going to mess up the next group. I'll take one question because I think it's important for you guys to ask us to kind of give us some concept of what you might have in questions. Nothing? Okay, thank you. Go ahead. This lady right here.
My name is Abia Adeleke. Thank you to the panelists. I'm proudly supporting Proud Nigerian. My question is from the standpoint of a small business owner and wanting to do, because I understand the bigger companies can afford the power and the things to do business in a place like Nigeria or South Africa, as the matter may be. But for a small business owner where you have the challenges of energy, what are some of the measures that the government or representatives of the government are putting into place to encourage small business owners like us to be able to do business in a place like Nigeria or South Africa? Right now, it's a huge challenge. I mean, even if you talk about aquaculture or you talk about leather goods or whatever kind of manufacturing you want to manufacture, by the time you pay the money on generators and on gasoline and fuel, if you can find it, you've eaten away all your profits. So what are some of the reassurances for people like us, small business owners?
Yeah, well, I did say something about the infrastructural challenges we're facing. But one thing I didn't mention was that in Nigeria we have a federal government agency that works with small and medium enterprises. As a matter of fact, that's all they do, and it's called the Small and Medium Enterprises Development Agency. So, you know, they work with the small and medium enterprises to address the challenges and the problems they face. But you know, in terms of the energy issues, I did say that, you know, work is going on within the energy sector, within the power sector, you know, to revitalize that, you know, and it's an ongoing thing. It's an ongoing thing which the government is doing with the private sector, you know, with the private, and of course with our international partners as well, you know. So it is a challenge, but that has not, you know, I said problems, you know, for a businessman, you know, a problem can actually be an opportunity, you know, and there are innovative, we're applying technology. As Mr. Zifek said, we are applying technology to resolve these problems. Right now, we're looking at solar off-grid, you know, solar off-grid power sources, you know, and it's taking off now, and you know the government is that's one of the things the government is aiming at, to ease the challenges in the power sector and make life easy for businesses. Thank you.
Thank you. I want to thank all the panelists, and I'm going to exit with one follow-up to you when you were speaking about the chambers and how to vet companies. That's one of the things that we do with the World Trade Centers. We work together with 300 different World Trade Centers. There's actually a World Trade Center in Lagos. There's one in Accra. I'm trying to remember, there's quite a few in Africa, but we work together, and we work with those US chambers. We work with the Nigerian chambers. We work with the US Department of Commerce to try to facilitate trade and helping people identify partners of like minds and vetting those companies even here in the United States. It has to work both ways. So I appreciate you bringing that up, because basically that's my job, is to help you all do that. I want to thank the panelists for being here. I want to thank them for carrying the ball for the others that weren't able to attend. And I want to thank you all for being wonderful and listening to us. And thank you, Toyin.